Welcome. Today we're going to discuss the technique Twisted Twig and how to relate it to other elements of the American Kenpo system. Now keep in mind that this is not family groupings and it's not a full comprehensive list. So rather, it's just different avenues to explore to get you thinking like an American Kenpo is. So let's start this relationship through the grabs and locks and how we deal with them based on our positioning. But before we do that, let's actually talk about the difference between a grab and a lock, because all locks are grabs, but not all grabs are locks. So another way to think about that is a lock is a specialized form of a grab that manipulates a joint. So let's start this relationship through the threes, because short three and long three are the forms that teach us, or one of their main concepts is how to deal with grabs and locks. And in this case, let's use the isolation of long three, the beginning isolation. If you notice, what we're doing is we're showing you the easiest option of dealing with a grab, just getting our hand out of the grab. That's because every grab has a weak spot. In this case, where the thumb and the fingers try to meet, there's an opening. Typically, obviously, if his hands are a lot bigger and I'm grabbing a little kid, there won't be an opening, but that would still be considered the weak spot. So how do I get out? Well, I try to go against it and I pull myself out. But sometimes we have to do what's called realigning ourselves in order to put us in a better position to get out. Now keep in mind that we could also go against the opposite end and apply pressure so that it's actually attacking that circle again, or the weak spot, so that we can get out. Think of this like a seesaw effect. Now keep in mind that this can work for either hand. But what happens if they're using both hands? Well, this would bring in something like darting mace. If you think about it, I no longer have that weak spot, but there's still a weak spot, and that's the center of the circle. So just like previously, what we're going to do is reposition ourselves so that I have the proper alignment to now do this push-pull and get my hand out through that hole. So how does this relate to Twisted Twig? Well, because if we look at Twisted Twig, we can do this off of one hand, or we can start adding the option of the second hand. So let's start with the first hand. Notice what we're doing though. We've changed it from a grab to a lock. If this was simply just a grab, I could easily just get my hand out again like we did previously. But we're now dealing with a lock, which means he's manipulating our joint, and it makes it a lot harder for me to try to get out by just removing my hand. So how do we deal with this? Well, like we did previously, I'm going to change my alignment, in this case, because I'm able to use my elbow so that I can get my hand out. So what happens if he's using both hands? Nothing. We do the exact same thing. Because of our positioning, I'm able to use this elbow to realign myself so that I can get my hand out. But remember that we're showing you different options. So rather than doing the same thing we did with the single, let's show you another way of dealing with a grab. In this case, removing the grab away from us, by us doing the same thing that they just did and then using our elbow to get our hand out. But this leaves us one more option, preventing the lock to begin with. By using my opposite hand, because remember, we do have a free hand since they use 2 against 1, we can now prevent that lock and then reposition ourselves so that we can take advantage of it. But let's continue with the alignment. Up to this point, we've had our hand palm up. What happens if our hand is palm down? Well, this would bring in something like gripping talon. Now keep in mind, all locks are positions of opportunity. And in this case, they have given us the opportunity to use their grab against them so that we can create a lock. What do I mean by that? Well, right now, they're just doing a grab, which means we can go back to doing what we were doing in long three, but we've already done that. So let's take advantage of the fact that they grabbed us and given us the opportunity that we can now create a lock on them. But before we do that, there's one more thing we got to talk about, this elbow. If you notice, previously, when we had our palm up, we were able to manipulate and use our elbow. In this case, with our palm down, it's kind of hard to use that elbow. So what we're doing is creating this lock to strike our opponent and get our hand out so that we're now able to use our elbow. But what happens if they use the opposite hand? This would bring in something like crossing talon. And again, just like we did earlier, I can easily just get my hand out, but we're showing you different options. And in this case, counter grabbing. So we're starting with them grabbing us, but we're going to end with us grabbing them. And taking advantage of the fact that we have a free hand, we're going to now lock up their elbow so we can control them by pushing them down. So let's do this another way. Rather than having our palm up or palm down, let's turn our palm sideways. This will give us our gift techniques. And another way to think about this is that this is just a double wrist grab. They're grabbing me, I'm grabbing them. But we could have just as easily done it with the opposite hand. But this is basically what we just did in gripping talon. But keep in mind that just like we did with the forearms, I could easily just get my hand out. But let's go back to the grab. So we're dealing with this grab. What does this mean based on our positioning? Well, that we now have availability of our elbow again. So in this case, something like Gift of Destiny, we're able to come in and take advantage of our elbow. But remember that we could also use our free hand. In this case, something like Broken Gift, where we can now come in and use our left elbow to push them up rather than pushing them down. But remember what I said earlier, locks are positions of opportunity. And guess what? In this case, we have the opportunity to put them into the Twisted Twig position and take advantage of that wrist lock. So just to recap, the way we related Twisted Twig to other elements of the American Kenpo system was with how we dealt with the grabs and locks based on the positioning of ourselves. We hope this video helps you understand the American Kenpo system a little bit better. Thank you very much.